Right, Leonard, welcome to our podcast, man. Reading your email when we first introduced each other, I was blown away about all the things that we had in common, and you know, it's awesome being able to see and just read your journey through that email. But I'm excited to hear from your own words as you tell it to us today. So, Leonard Casiple, thank you for being here today, brother, and thank you for being willing to share your story.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciated David Yusuk connected us, and is a wonderful guy, honored one of the greatest Green Berets in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And forgotten Green Beret, ended up on the streets. And I really appreciate people like that who finds a ray of hope, shine a light on the heroes that went before us.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, you served in the regiment, and, we're related by blood.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Leonard, tell us, man, tell us your journey, your story.
I grew up. I grew up in southern Philippines, born and raised in southern Philippines during martial law under the Marcos administration. Saw some, it was the communists versus the government.
Yeah.
Both sides were mean to each other, and the people were just in the middle. And because of that, and I don't know if my parents still had issues with World War II when Japan invaded the Philippines. But I grew up a very, very traumatized childhood.
Yeah.
Sexually abused at 5, tied to a telephone pole in the rain by my own mom in public. Abused by my godmother, who was also my first grade teacher.
Oh, wow.
I could see the picture. She's holding me, during my Catholic baptism, and she was abusing me in first grade. And so I was angry the whole time, just angry. I could, the story that I wrote online, I showed a picture of when I was 2 and around 7, and by the time I was 12, my eyes just lost sparkle. I can tell. I couldn't tell, as a kid, but now looking at it, it's just the soul. You can read the soul from somebody's eyes.
Yeah.
And I lost that spark. And then we immigrated to the U.S. in 1980, and lived in public housing. And but when I was 16. Some kids held me down and tattooed this green dot on my forehead. And I quit high school because I didn't want to be laughed at every single day. And then when I started getting pimples and acne, it was actually more beautiful because I no longer had to hide this.
Yeah.
It hid it for me. And so I was just angry my whole life. When I got married to my first girlfriend. She left me. I was just angry. And I didn't know why I was angry. I didn't know until a few years ago when I actually healed. And I cried about all my pain at Save a Warrior for 5 days. And that's what I needed.
Yeah. Childhood trauma is something that we don't get, it doesn't get explained to us. We don't have somebody sit down with us and break down how it's going to affect the rest of our lives. Nobody does that. It's up to us to struggle and stumble, and for many of us, we don't make it through that. We don't make it through the other side of that journey of healing. It's just stumbling and holding on to that hate and anger because you're brutalized.
Yeah,
you're not only being attacked and punished at home, but the outside world is also a place of violence and fear. You're living in fight or flight, but no one's telling us that. No one's coming around the corner saying like, "Hey, little guy, it's okay." Again, life is pretty fucking brutal when you're a child that's living in constant abuse. And I know that from my own experience. And when you talk about that, losing that luster, that's that's indicative of somebody that's surviving. That's a child that's purely in survival. And we've seen it as we've traveled across the world on our deployments. We've seen it. The little ones that are just out there, just in the middle of danger, looking for food and water. And we don't understand it. We don't, like, for a lot of people, they don't understand it. But I know that you've seen it. I know that you were able to connect the dots, and even more so now. Man. Yeah. And I want to ask you, like, when you made that move, when you guys left the Philippines, moved to the United States, and now you're in public housing, now it's a whole different animal. What was that like? Like, I would imagine that at first, maybe there's a little bit of hope and a little bit of excitement, but then to be met with another wave of pain and brutalization.
That's a very good question. I grew up without electricity and reliable running water. I remember studying with Coleman lamps, listening to the radio and battery. And when we got to public housing, I was like, man, I felt like a millionaire. I don't know what a millionaire feels like. I had power on demand, water on demand, and but we were surrounded with people who were also struggling, in and out of jail, in and out of prison, drugs, gangs, and I needed to fit in, so I joined. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be kicked out. My ass would get kicked. And I remember one day, one of my neighbors said, "Hey, you piss us off. We're going to throw a grenade at your house." And to me, that's real. I grew up under martial law, right? Yeah. Knowing now, that guy probably never had a grenade, but he was a lot older than me, and I believed him. So I said, well, I got to protect my family. I got to join them. Yeah. But then that started a whole downslide down a hill I didn't realize I was going to go down on. And it was just hopeless. And nobody would hire me. I was floating around I've been a janitor, a dishwasher, delivered newspapers, landscaping. I mean, you name it. Yes. Asbestos removal. I did it. Working at Goodwill, busboy, whatever I could find for work. And it just sensed, there was an emptiness that I couldn't fill. And then I stayed angry. Then I began to, every day I would begin that cycle, right? I'd get angry at something. I didn't know what. I would feel bad about it. I'd feel guilty about it. And I'd do it again. And then it became a shame hit every single day. I needed that hit, that adrenaline hit, the shame hit. It was a horrible cycle that you're right. Nobody tells us, nobody gives us a op manual, SOP, a checklist. Like, hey, I remember growing up, I'm the only son, and I remember growing up praying for a big brother.
Yep. And that's why gang culture is so brutal.
It's powerful.
It's that young kid that not only wants protection, but man, wants to belong to something. Like it preys upon the weakest individuals.
Yeah.
Because it sits there and says, hey, you want to be protected? You want to have a family? You want to feel that you're loved and cared for? Hey, all you got to do is survive this jump in. It's all you got to do.
And that is true. You are accepted right away. And all my other friends, were also had horrible childhoods. They didn't know any better. No one came from the outside. I mean, we couldn't afford to drive anywhere. So, we were in that 5-10 square mile area that, just put property that didn't belong to us, would put our initials as if we owned it.
Yeah.
Oh, because we didn't have anything. All we had was spray paint. And it's that feeling of not belonging in the city and the government not caring enough about it, being laughed at, and going to certain neighborhoods and saying, "Hey, you guys don't belong here." Heard that multiple times, and it hurts, but it's reality.
Yeah, when you don't belong to the chosen class, when you don't belong to the individuals that have, and you're part of the have-nots, that affects you as a kid. Like it's almost better when you're surrounded by everybody that's poor. Like when everybody is equally poor, like you don't have to worry about shit.
Yeah,
you're wearing Goodwill clothes and you're wearing shoes that aren't cool. But the moment you move into an area with a just slightly like middle class, and now you don't have as much, fuck, that's brutal.
Yeah,
that is a pain that so many kids that are going through, and they don't understand how to, look at what really matters. Like I have a home, I have parents, and if you don't have that, what do you ground yourself with?
Yeah.
Like when you don't have shit, where do you go? Gang culture and acting out. And people don't understand. Now we do. We have these things. We have this concept of trauma-informed care, understanding the ACE, understanding childhood adversity. 10 things that if you meet the criteria of these 10 things, doctors, school teachers, adults within your inner circle of influence, they now have an understanding why you act out, why you're quick to anger. You didn't have that shit growing up, and they certainly didn't have it when you were growing up.
No. I had a 9 out of 10 by 12, age 12, looking
Holy
back.
Shit.
Yeah, so I was angry. And 4 and 6, you're like this.
Yeah.
By the time you're 30 or 40. So I had this conversation with my barber last night. He's, from Mexico. His parents immigrated, crossed illegally and became citizens. That he said that he got worse treatment from the Mexicans who were born here. And I said, you know what? The same thing happened to me.
Funny fucking.
Kids who were born here, like crushed me.
All right, we gotta call out some Mexicans right now, and I say it jokingly, but with all honesty, and even in the military too. Yeah. That's a hard group to try to like. I came from Panama, born and raised in Panama, left as a kid, and was brought into an environment where I wasn't allowed to associate with my culture. You can't speak Spanish because we were in an abusive environment with a predator.
Yeah.
We had a predator that was victimizing us and brutally. And above all, he was racist. And he didn't want us to look like we were Hispanic or talk like we were Hispanic. So we weren't allowed to use Spanish in the house. Now, my sister, she kept using it. And I quickly assimilated. Yeah. But one thing I realized real quick as a kid growing up, no one's going to be more brutal to you than Mexicans. Because you don't look, you don't talk, you don't have any. And that was one of the hardest things to realize, that you don't belong with these kids, but you certainly as fuck don't belong with these guys. So it's like, fuck, man in the middle. That's the worst place to be, caught in the fucking middle.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got in the military that I was able to meet Puerto Ricans, Panamanians, Dominicans. And it's like, okay, like a whole plethora of individuals that I can now relate to and talk to. And they come from different backgrounds. They come from different experiences. But as a kid, man, Mexican Americans were brutal.
The Filipino kids were brutal to me.
Yeah.
Like absolutely brutal to me. And you're right, I couldn't understand it. So going into the army, it was saving grace for me.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It is for so many of us. Because we don't have, when you were talking about the jobs that were available to you, landscaping, dishwasher, busboy, like landscape, we don't have a frame of reference of what it means to be successful because we're not seeing anybody like ourselves reach those milestones. I didn't have a way to pay for college as a kid. I tried doing it on my own. That shit was not happening. Fun fact, National Guard makes you pay that payment up front to the school. Then they send you a check. Figuring that shit out, my first attempt to go to school. Like, this shit ain't working. It doesn't work for us. You're trying to work full time and try to get the American dream of going to college.
Yeah.
That was infuriating. And that anger, that was present in my journey, and it stayed there.
Yeah. People knew me as Angry Leo. You know, they said he was either angry or eating. So that two modes. And that was my first team sergeant said that to me. And but you know, I needed to hear that. He said it jokingly.
Yeah.
But that began, you know, the introspection of like, why am I angry? But then during deployments, you know, I didn't have time to, you know, anger was accepted, right? That's how you stay alive.
Yes, it is a powerful emotion that so many of us get into this feedback loop of rewarding your anger. Your NCOs reward you. Violence of action.
Yeah.
Violence of action. And we misinterpret. We see the yelling and the screaming, and we see and we get rewarded for that. And it's maybe years later on a combat deployment that you realize that decisive action, calm, cool, collected individuals, they're not the ones screaming. They're not the ones losing their shit. Those are the guys that are leading.
Yeah.
Guys that can be, that were, and yes, they were far and few between, but they made a huge impact. I know they made a huge impact in my life and in my military career, was finally seeing the individuals that it wasn't screaming and making a grand show of things and being angry all the time. It was the calm, cool, collected quarterbacks that was like, oh shit, why am I so angry?
Yeah. You know, and I cherish my time in SF because I failed Special Forces selection twice.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I was a 21-day non-select, early 1994, January 1994. I had injured my hip, but I didn't quit. So it was the night before the 12 miler, and then through a team week, I dragged my left hip. I couldn't lift it up. I came in last on the 12 miler. I came in last on the 24 miler because I just couldn't lift my left leg. But I didn't quit. I don't know how I made it through team week. And then 9 months later, I went right back. It was too early. I was still injured.
Yeah.
I didn't make it all the way through. So luckily, they gave me a chance to come back on the third time. And the third time, I was top 5% on everything because I already knew how far to go. I knew how to prep. I mean, I prepped the right way. I had a first sergeant that came from Green, Task Force Green. He told me, he goes, I know you failed twice. I'm going to give you 30 days where you only come in from 1,300 to 1,600. In the morning, you're going to work out. In the evening, you're going to work out. So I did 2 workouts a day. And man, I love that man. He was a hard ass, but he set me up for success. And, you know, I was top in most of the events. And I was so grateful, grateful for that man.
That's a leader. And kudos to you. That takes guts. I've seen individuals that weren't prepared, and they literally get flushed out because of PT test.
Yeah.
And they never come back. Well, they just wanted to check the box. Oh, I tried. Well, did you really try? Did you? You showed up and you weren't able to do a PT test. Come on, guy. But then I've seen individuals that gave it their all, and they say that it's exactly everything they wanted to do. This is the career I want to have. This everything I want to do in my entire life, and they don't make it. And they go back and they're angry and hateful and spiteful. Bullshit. They fucked me on this. Blah blah blah. Never go back. And all they would have needed to have done was dig deep and say, if this is really what I want to do, I'm gonna go fucking do it. Yeah. It takes guts. It takes a lot more guts to go through and try again. There's a lot can be said for luck. Hey, the right cadre didn't see you fuck up. The right cadre didn't see you. There was a miscount.
Yeah.
But to come back and try again and give it 100% because you know that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
That takes fucking guts, Leonard. That's awesome.
Thank you. You know, I'd never been on a team, you know, so the ODA was my first team.
Yeah.
And it was just wonderful to be part of that, you know, have a higher calling than myself.
Yep.
And then right after 9/11, I was part of a small team that went into the Philippines, October 2001, to assess the fight against the Abu Sayyaf group in the island where I was born.
Yeah. Tell me what, and a lot of people, history lesson, a lot of people don't know that the entire time, and even like we've lost Green Berets in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Like it is not like a place where, you know, it's idyllic and it's always calm, and it gets put on the back burner of people's minds because Afghanistan and Iraq, but we had guys there that were fighting. We had guys there actively engaged, doing the real thing, doing the real mission. Because Afghanistan, Iraq is sexy because we're doing the door kick and everything.
Yeah.
But what's the real SF mission? Leonard, you gotta let's dive into this one.
That's the classic foreign internal defense.
Yes.
I was a brand new E7 at that time. And I went in with a small team. It was then Colonel, now retired Lieutenant General Fridovich was my group commander. The S3, Lynn Ashley, a few other guys, CSM. And we had a guy from Green, had a guy from the Navy SEALs, had a guy from the Air Force CCT, a captain, then a small assault team for, just in case. So we flew in we all started from Okinawa, flew in into under cover of darkness, supposedly because it's supposed to be hush-hush. But by the time we got there, the news was at the airport, so we couldn't do it. So we spent 3 or 4 days assessing the national level policy against terrorism. We went to the version of the Pentagon, and we all wore civilian clothes. So General Fridovich introduced me as Mr. Casiple because, I was enlisted, and those guys there were graduates of their academies, and they're very rank conscious.
Yep.
And so that lasted for about 2 days. And then, they started, because I spoke the language, they started, they poked me and they said, okay, yeah, you're enlisted. And then, but then we went to Zamboanga, which is the regional command, spent some time there. And because I was the only one who spoke the language and I'm brown, and the Americans hadn't been there since 1902.
Wow.
Yeah, the last time Americans were officially in their region was 1902, and that was 2001. So I went to get water. Took the van with the driver, went to get water at the mall, exited the mall. 30 minutes later, when I exited, they blew up, the Abu Sayyaf blew up a bomb, killed 5 people, injured 40, because they said, we know Americans are here.
Yep.
And then the very next day, we flew to Basilan and assessed how they fought the Abu Sayyaf group. But by that time, the Abu Sayyaf group had held the Burnhams, a missionary couple, and Mr. Sabero, who they beheaded. He's from San Jose. Those guys are brutal. They're just criminals. They say they're terrorists. They're not. They're common criminals who portray themselves as freedom fighters, but they're really not. They're just hoods with guns. Hoodlums with guns. So then we flew back to Okinawa, but before that, we gave an out brief, and this is how I realized, and I knew this from the beginning, growing up in the Philippines. You talked about, bringing the army, the Philippine Army, to counter-terrorist unit to some areas that belong to the Philippine Marines, their AO. And right then and there, generals were like, no, that's my area. You can't come in. The enemy knows this, and they exploit that.
Yep.
So they frequently go into different AOs so that, the commander will, it's just, it's the tribal mentality. But then we went to Okinawa, finalized the plan. And then when I was already back at Lewis, I got a call from Hawaii. They said, Leonard, you used to be in psychological operations. I was in PSYOP for 2 years before I went to SF. And then they said, we don't have a name for this operation. So you need to bring out, you have 20 minutes to make a name. I said, 20 minutes? I said, yeah, that's all you got. And so
classic.
I closed myself up in the room, and I was thinking, what symbology, things that I learned from PSYOP, right?
Yeah.
Winning hearts and minds, symbols, words. So it just happens that the national bird of the Philippines is the monkey-eating eagle. It's an eagle. And then also, ours is the bald eagle. And at that time, they had already coined Operation Enduring Freedom.
Yeah.
So I gave 3 possible names, and they picked Operation Freedom Eagle. And I explained it. Freedom and then eagle is by national loyalty, by national commitment, by national birds. And it worked. It was approved, the whole plan plus the name, an afterthought, it was approved in December. And then I was right back in the same place in February. Helped set up the first group, the footprint in the area, 100 years later.
Dang.
Yeah, it's amazing. I spoke the language. I did a lot. And because I spoke the language, I was often overworked.
Yeah. Yep.
Which also happened in Iraq. I graduated from the 18-month Arabic language course, and 7 months later, I was in Iraq.
Damn.
Doing a joint combined counterterrorist task force. And language is beautiful because, you can connect.
Yeah.
But if you're the only one who speaks it, you're going to be overworked.
You're working nonstop.
Oh, but it's a beautiful thing. And I'm just so glad that I was given the opportunities. I didn't apply for Arabic. My command came to me and they said, we need to send 2 people to Arabic language school. I said, why? We're in Asia.
Yeah.
They said, just go. Just go. We'll make sure you come back to the SIF. I was at the SIF at the time. They said, we'll make sure you come back here. So I did that, went right back to the SIF. And I was the only one who graduated. I was the only one in first group Arabic language. Graduated with 3.2+, and then later 3.3. And but during my time in school, my friend Obi got killed. Obadiah Kolath. He had failed Delta selection twice and finally made it. That was his first year while I was in school, and we were on the same team. And he got killed in Iraq, August. And then another guy on my team, Joe Andres, got killed December 24, 2005 in Iraq during a hit. So I made sure that I practiced Arabic so well because I made it a personal mission. I'm gonna honor my friends.
Yeah.
I did good. I think I did good. We did a lot of hits, captured a lot of people. There's some bad people out there.
Especially that time frame in Iraq. That time frame for Iraq was very volatile. And I want to ask you, going through with that high demand, what was your emotional state like? I mean, you've gone through a life of nothing but suffering and adversity. Did you find it being channeled into the mission, into the work?
I can say that it was channeled, one, because I became a people pleaser. Throughout my life, I had to please. I had to mold my personality. I had to suppress. I had to lie about myself to be accepted.
Yeah.
And it was not, I knew it was wrong, but then I carried that throughout my whole life. And it helped me, when I had to be mean, and I could do it, right? Because I've seen meanness from childhood. I know what that is. As a kid, as a teenager, I know what that is. So when I needed to put fear in the enemy's heart, I could do it, like genuinely. And then, but kindness also, I was very, very kind because I know what it feels to be bullied and to be beat.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of the being part of that, looking at the data, looking at the books, we statistically should not be where we're at. We should not have made it into the community. We should not have made it into the middle. We shouldn't have made it past our, honestly, like early 20s.
Right.
And it's that ability to, even though we don't have the tools to deal with our trauma, to deal with the things that we experience, we still have a higher capacity to show kindness and to show remorse and empathy and sympathy, even if we can't show it towards ourselves for the shame and the guilt and all the pain that we're dealing with. We're still able to tap into our humanness and be kind to others and see the benefit of being a supportive team member. And that's the beauty of learning all this on the backside, because after you debrief, so to speak, all the trauma, you're like, well, how the fuck did I make it? How did I survive all this shit? Why am I not in prison? Why am I not sitting locked up behind bars, addicted to drugs and substances? It's like, well, there's a little bit of luck, but there's also something within us that a lot of people don't have. And it's that ability to be like, even though I've suffered, even though I've been through so much, I'm not going to just take it out on everybody else. I'm not going to always reach. And we do have, our downfalls and we do have our shortcomings, but I do believe that we remain and retain a piece of that wanting to be kind and generous, just like we always wanted somebody to be kind and generous to ourselves.
That is so true. And even when I was effective being mean, it hurt me.
Yes,
I would ruminate about it, and it really got to me when I couldn't walk for a few years after I got medically retired, and I felt like that 5-year-old kid again, that people would just come up behind me and start hitting me, because I was on crutches. For a long time. That's why my company logo with the PV looks like a man on crutches on one leg, because I'm honoring that. That was some of the darkest times of my life, and I didn't know what that meant. My mom had died in 2016. Before that, my dad in 2014. But I didn't cry when my dad died. But I cried when my mom died, and we had a horrible relationship, just like this. Then a few months later, I read that somewhere just by accident that we cry the hardest when the person we hate the most dies, because now I have no one to blame. And I didn't know how to process that. I became suicidal. I just fell apart at the dining table. Just bawling. I couldn't stop myself, because all the years and decades of, I never got an apology from my mom, and I never got an apology for this, and I still didn't know how to fix myself. That's when I contacted Mission 22. Those guys, Magnus Johnson, Brad Hubbard, those guys saved my life, sent me to some programs where I healed. And everything changed from there. When I learned to be vulnerable and around men, and I shared my story, I just took out whatever was in my heart and in my gut and then spilled it. And just said, it's okay. You're still worth it. You're lovable. You're worth it. You're the best version of you is not even, you haven't seen it yet. It's hug me. And they taught me 3-minute hugs. And and saved my life.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't talk about vulnerability when we're in uniform. We don't talk about vulnerability as being an asset, as being a vital tool to being able to reckon with what you're going through. You know, I share openly, and I didn't understand it. I didn't have a frame of reference about vulnerability outside of you don't want to be vulnerable against the enemy.
Right.
That's the only understanding I had about vulnerability until I cracked open Brene Brown's book.
Yeah.
Until I realized that vulnerability is a strong point.
Yeah.
If I'm willing to put myself and expose myself in my most vulnerable parts about everything that I've gone through, the shame, the guilt, the pain, the trauma, in a public forum like a podcast or a YouTube video, I don't care how many people reject it and say, well, men shouldn't do that. They shouldn't talk about that. It has no bearing how I feel about who I am and what I've done.
Yeah.
I'm saying that to my face, but you won't.
Yeah.
What matters is the individual that sees it. What matters is the individual that connects with it and says, holy shit, that's what I'm going through. That's the same thing I'm dealing with. He got help. How did he get better?
Yeah.
Like we are all connected as human beings. The human experience is something that we are all connected through. My suffering should not be just let here next to me, just hanging out with me. My suffering is a powerful way of connecting with other people by sharing what helped me overcome these things. Because now more than ever, we're told that you have PTSD, you have TBI, you have anxiety, depression, insomnia, sleep apnea. Put that warm diagnosis on and you stay there.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about overcoming it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fuck that.
No,
it's a powerful tool, a diagnosis. It lets you know what the enemy is, and it lets you know how you can fight back. But we don't do it by ourselves. We don't heal by ourselves. There's powerful organizations. There's resources. There are doctors, clinicians, dietitians. The list goes on, and they help us fight. Just like when we were in Iraq or Afghanistan, you didn't go fight the enemy on your own.
Yeah,
you went and you got every powerful fucking resource, and then you took it to the enemy. And I'm so glad you found Mission 22. It's a powerful group that's changing lives on a daily basis.
Yeah, they're amazing. And talking about vulnerability, I was on a podcast where I talked about, we had to leave North Carolina because of issues with drug dealers.
Yeah,
and I was prosecuted twice because I went against the drug dealers. But I didn't want to live. I didn't want to relive the projects. I didn't want to relive growing up under martial law. I had to stand up for my community, but the community was afraid. So we lost our house. We had to move all the way across the country. I had to call the FBI. But I was in this podcast talking about that, being vulnerable about how we had to move across the country. As a Green Beret, I had to pack up my bags, move my family across the country to be safe. And the host called me 18 months later. He said, somebody called me from North Carolina and watched the video. He said, you might know him. I said, yeah, what's his name? He said the name. And I said, whoa, that's my neighbor across the street. He said, yeah, he watched the podcast. It brought him to tears. He said that it's time to apologize. And I cried for a little bit. He, Barry listened to me. I said, man, it's been like 15 years, that from start to end. Now,
15 years.
6 years dealing with that. And we had been in California almost 9 years now. And, we had to live in a 1-bedroom apartment, being poor again, right? From a 3-bedroom home in a golf course community to a 1-bedroom because couldn't afford, nobody would buy the house. I couldn't work. Just really, I felt like crushed to the world. And I just had gotten medically retired, couldn't work, couldn't walk. I felt like, a kid being, wow.
Again.
Crushed again. From hero to zero,
And what happened? What started it all off?
The issue in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah. We bought a house. I got stationed at SWIC in my 19th year in the Army. And my wife and I decided we were going to buy a house, live there. And well, it just so happened that I did all the homework. I looked at the crime records. I looked at the schools. I was like, man, this is a good place.
Yeah.
Golf course community, second best neighborhood in the city. So this is good. And so I even did a day and night recon. And well, I was home for, they had replaced this disc on my neck for 30, I was home for 30 days. And I was up at night, and I realized that at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, people were coming in with tools and leaving a few minutes later with nothing, Men, women, I mean, just get in, get out, get in, get out. I threw out there every single night. And so there's something wrong going on here. So I started taking pictures, started taking down, license plates. And I reported to the police. Well, inadvertently, it wasn't done on purpose, but they had compromised my reports. So they knew it was turning them in.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, and then 6 months later, they caught a murderer that had been hiding there for 3 months. And there was a change, and you can pulse, just like in war, right? You can feel the community pulse, right?
Yeah.
And by March 2010, they had gotten really brave against me. And we had just lived there 6 months. They said, wow, there's a really a change in the attitude. Like there was March, and then the murderer got caught in July hiding in that house. So what happened was the guy murdered someone in March, had been hiding there. So I couldn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they felt powerful, because they had a guy hiding who was, just killed someone down the street in a bar. And so I stepped up my reporting. Even the police met with me a few times. And, then the PTSD kicked in. I refused to get a PTSD diagnosis during my my medical board. The guy said, if I give you a medical diagnosis for PTSD, you'll never get hired by a federal job. And I said, well, I guess I don't have a PTSD then.
Man.
And so 2 years later, I was angry. I was fearful. I couldn't sleep. And I finally went to the VA. I said, and all this time I'm dealing with the drug dealers across the street. And I said, I need help, because otherwise I'm going to end up going to prison. Because I'm still I still have the combat mindset. And got a lot of help. They ended up being prosecuted twice. We won twice. But the winning in court and winning in the street are two different things.
Yeah.
The street has different rules, and I know that from the Philippines, and I know that from public housing, and it's the same rules in whatever community. Yeah. And so it was really a crushing blow. It was such, those years are so dark. I remember my kids and my wife, they would sleep in the living room when I'm away. And we had sticks and knives and baseball bats on both sides of each bed. That's how afraid we were. And in 2018, 3 years after we had moved here, I asked my wife and kids, I said, I think it's time for us to get rid of these baseball bats, knives, and machetes. And I can still see it in my kids, my middle son and my wife's eyes. They said, are you sure? I said, yeah, we've been here 3 years. I think we're safe now. And it was painful. It was painful to watch. Then I went to Mission 22, helped pay for my Save a Warrior trip where I healed. And then we had so much trauma. We went to Project Sanctuary, which is a 6-day retreat for families with PTSD.
Good.
In Colorado. We had so much trauma that we had an argument on the night of day 3. They left on day 4. I was the only one there without a family. So I went home on day 5. This is like June, tail end of June 2019. I got home. They said that you can't live here. So I was kicked out of my house. And, the significance of that date was we came to San Diego July 5th, 2015. And we were supposed to graduate like July 3rd from that program, 2019. And that was going to be like, our Freedom Day, right?
Yeah.
Freedom from PTSD, freedom from drug dealers. It wasn't meant to be. So I moved out. I got a job at a warehouse in a Navy base in Ventura County, north of here. And I didn't have a place to stay. I had everything in my Jeep. My first stop was at the Ventura County Fair. There's a little parking lot, and I needed to take a nap before I started my job on Monday. And so I took a nap. I was listening to the families, having fun. I said, wow, like families are, here I am, homeless again, without a family. And I went to sleep, and I called the Navy Lodge and said, you guys got a room? He said, yeah, we just got one open. So I stayed there for 10 days. And but the significance of that, during that time, I went to school at night with the GI Bill, using I went to school at night for a master's in public policy. And because of COVID, and then, a few months later, I got back with my family. But because of COVID, the graduation was not held at Thousand Oaks or the campuses. They held the graduation at the Ventura County Fairground. And I graduated on May 15th, 2021, which is my wedding anniversary. My wife was there. It was my second master's degree with 1 GI Bill. It was also 2021 Armed Forces Day. I graduated just 300 feet from where I had 2 years before. Felt like the
Rock
world
bottom.
just, took the rug from under me, and here I am spinning out of control again.
Yeah.
And so just the patience, I realized that the veteran, we get a lot of help.
Yep.
But the family members, they get zero.
Yep.
They suffer. And my kids, are still struggling. My story is not the only one out there that's extreme like that. There's a lot more. I know of another Green Beret who was shot in the back by his neighbor, drug dealing neighbor. Had to move away, leave the house that he had bought. Otherwise, we'll end up going to prison because we don't know how to back down. That's why they selected us for special forces. We don't back down.
Yeah.
And so, thanks for letting me share that story. It's
absolutely, Leonard. I think we are the number one censor in our communities, like hands down. We're always the first ones to notice. Like, why is there a car showing up at 10 p.m.? Why are there multiple cars showing up on 10 p.m.? Why is there always a grease stain or oil stain in front of your house from cars that just come in and they idle, they walk in and go out? These are things I noticed in one of my first houses here in Florida.
Yeah.
It's, it's not uncommon for Green Berets to be the ones that see something, contact the police, and then take up recording and observation on their own.
Yeah.
And it sucks that people can't rally around and support you when you're there screaming for their safety, for their goodwill. And I'm truly sorry you went through that, but I'm glad that you're in a better place. I'm glad you're in a better area, and you didn't just take a knee and fall apart. You kept moving forward. And that's what's really important. That's what's important for all of our journey, especially yours, highlighting that at any moment you could have quit. At any moment you could have just said, screw it, I'm done. You kept moving forward. And that's that's living to that warrior, not just a warrior ethos, but our own creed at the very end, live to succeed again.
Yeah.
Like, failure is temporary. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
find a way through this. I'm going to find a way to turn this into a positive and keep moving forward. We have no other option.
Yeah. You said it so well. And I'm going down to, at the end of the month, I'm going back to North Carolina. And I'm going to break bread with my neighbor.
Good.
He changed his life, sent me some pictures. He got rid of all his friends. He said he was struggling also with his mom. His mom has just died. So he went, he went left where he should have gone right. And I've done the same thing. So I told him, I love him. I said, you're a hero for changing your life.
Yeah.
And the house issue, the court cost didn't even come to mind.
Yeah.
And it shows me how much I've grown. I have to be proud of that, give myself love and grace, because I could have stayed hateful.
Yes.
But I did the love and the vulnerability just came out. And that's the power of vulnerability. The guy watched that show where I talked about my life. He was drawn to tears, and he was compelled. He told me I didn't want to die knowing I didn't apologize to you.
That's powerful.
I love him. We're family now. I said, we have a bond that can never be broken. That was forged from violence. And I told him, you're a brother now, you're family. You can call me anytime. And I could never say that 10 years ago, man. 10 years ago, I would have been like, like,
die on that hill.
Little words,
die on that hill with that anger. And it does nothing but destroy us. And I now understand intimately why, when you are in counseling and you're dealing with grief and closure, when dealing with trauma that was, that you were subjected to at the hands of a predator, at the hands of somebody that was supposed to be a protector, supposed to be a parent. When your entire life, there's no forgiveness. There's no, you hold on to that hate. And you hold on to that hate so much, you fantasize about being able to exact your vengeance and your judgment. And then what happens when you don't?
Yeah.
What happens when ultimately God's will is far greater than yours? And you have to surrender to that understanding of like, nothing that I do, nothing that I can physically do to that person is going to ever be as righteous and as perfect as what God has intended for that person. Like, having to just say, you know what, you're right. I need to let this go. I need to forgive. And ultimately that's for you. I know it. I know it now because I experienced it. I didn't want to forgive. I didn't want to say, I forgive you. I didn't want to just say that in those little words, that little act of say, I forgive you. I didn't want to. I wanted to hang on to that hate. What's that doing to me? That's slowing my progress. That's slowing my journey. Forgiveness is not saying that I am absolving you of your sins and what you did to me. No, I'm choosing to not carry it anymore. I'm choosing to not let it be a burden.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. Most men don't get to that level of what you just said, and we know that. We see that all the time, and it's sad to see. And one of the reasons is that vulnerability, not only vulnerability, but crying is seen as a weakness.
Yeah.
But I posted this 2 years ago on LinkedIn. I said, there are 4 types of tears. Only one is for weakness. It's to manipulate because that's fake.
Yep.
It's not a tear of strength. It's fake. But the other 3 are for strength, for courage, tears for joy. You win, I cry for you.
Yeah.
Physical pain. I get hip surgery, knee replacement. That's painful, man. I got some tears coming out. Had a bad landing. You got tears.
Yep.
Valid tears. But then tears for sorrow.
Yeah.
I can cry in this culture. I can cry for a dead singer I never met. I can cry for a dead actor I never met. I can cry for my friends who died. but I can't cry for me, for my own sorrow, for failing, for being mean to my kids and my wife, and for not doing enough or doing too much. I can't cry for that grief. But that's sorrow is a tear of courage. It's a good tear. But we seem to, we think this culture said, crying is for girls. But that's we all have tear ducts.
Yep.
And somebody from LinkedIn contacted me and said, "Hey, I needed to see that today." That was my permission to. He said, "I'm going into 30 days at the Betty Ford Clinic." I said, "Really?" We talked, became friends, and after 30 days, he called me back. He said, "Hey, I'm done. I'm going into 21 days of outpatient," and all because of that message that, hey, man, you're not weak. Everybody's got tear ducts.
Yeah. Crying is a vital aspect of your life. There's no reason why you should hold on to tears, and there's no reason why you should listen to anybody telling you that you should reserve crying for special moments like a wedding. That it don't fall apart. Let me tell you, in the last 2 years, I have cried for so many reasons, for all the trauma, for all the pain, for all the suffering, for the people that I wasn't allowed to cry for when they passed as a child. I have, fun fact, I have an intimate knowledge of what it means to not be able to cry when somebody close to you dies. You're told, and you hear that you're being punished and you're being brutally beaten, and they tell you, "Hey, you want some more?
I'm sorry,
but if you cry, you'll get some more." And it's like, okay, then you have to hold it down. You have to swallow it down. Let that out.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are that you're from the community, you're from the military, and because statistics are awesome, chances are you've gone through something. And if you haven't gotten help, if you're always constantly fighting tears because you feel like you're less of a man for crying, let me tell you, it doesn't make a difference. You're still a strong individual.
Oh yeah,
you're meant to cry. It's in it's a vital aspect. Yeah. Something moves you. If you see something on TV and it connects with you, or you read a poem that speaks to you, let it out. It's perfectly normal. What's not normal is holding everything in. What's not normal is holding everything in till you have a panic attack or you have a mental breakdown. Yeah. That's the abnormality. That's the things that I went through. So I went through those, so you don't have to. So let go of them. Let go of it. Be willing to cry. Be willing to show strength like Leonard has. Being willing to experience every single emotion that's out there, because guess what? Emotions are part of the human condition, and you are no different, my man.
That's amazing, Danny. I'm glad you summarized it that way. You said it so eloquently, so well that there's power in tears, cleansing power in tears, and better than any drug you can ever get.
Yes, it releases powerful endorphins.
Yeah,
crying's a beautiful thing. If we weren't supposed to experience it, why did God give us the ability to do it?
Yep. Tear ducts. We all have them. we all have them. And I'm so grateful, that from coming up as a high school dropout, now I'm working on my doctorate degree.
Nice.
In law and policy. And when I introduce myself to the class, or to every class, I no longer hold back. I say, I'm a high school dropout. I'm an immigrant. I joined the Army with a GED and a green card. Became a Green Beret.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's an amazing journey. It's individuals such as yourself that make me proud to be a Green Beret. Like looking at our lineage, looking at everybody that came before us and paved the way. It's not about the John Waynes. I say this all the time because people still have that image of the Green Beret starring John Wayne. That's not us. No. That's not us. It's the the Puerto Rican kid. It's the Dominican that came here at 19 and took a shot because he had no other option.
Yeah.
It's people like you, Leonard, that came here and fought for every single thing they could and then said to themselves, you know what? I think I can fucking do that.
Yeah. I'm 5'4", you know. I'm Rambo.
No, you're better than Rambo because you're fucking real. That takes me back to our SUT cadre that had I remember Field Team 3 had this giant friggin' poster of Rambo, and it said Rambo quit SUT, and it's so fucking true. It's so true.
Yeah,
it's not about the 6'7" guy. It's not about the bodybuilder dude. No, that doesn't mean shit when you got to move for 12 fucking miles or 24 fucking miles. Do you have the grit? Yeah. Do you have the grit? Do you have the tenacity? And do you have the spirit of a fucking champion? And Leonard, I know for a fact that you do. I can't thank you enough for being here today and for sharing your story, brother. Real quick before I let you go, besides working on your doctorate, what are you working on now? Are you working on your book? Are you going to publish it anytime soon?
I started my own company last year, 2022.
Hell yeah.
It's called Public Value. But then I started that in January 2022. But the VA called me in on July 5th, 2022, which is the anniversary of us arriving, in 7th year anniversary of us coming to San Diego. They called me in, and I didn't know what it was. They called me in. They said, hey, you've earned 2 master's degrees from going GI Bill. We'll pay for your doctorate if you want to get one. So, I was like,
hell yeah.
So here I am. I'm trying to build my company. At the same time, I'm learning law and policy at Northeastern, and my policy focus is a global water supply. I'm learning for the last 18 months. I've been learning nothing but law, policy, and water. And I'll be able to help communities. I grew up without reliable running water. I grew up without electricity. And we've been to countries where it didn't have good water.
Yep.
So my goal is to be able to help communities. Water is cleansing. You can't live 3 to 5 days without water. You can't raise crops or animals without water. We can walk somewhere. We don't need gas in the car, but we can't live without water.
Yeah.
So I'm truly grateful. I mean, this country has given me so much. So much. I can't even imagine wow,
yeah. I feel it too, brother. Yeah. Man, thank you so much for being here, Leonard. And to all of you listening, please remember that you can go through hard things. You can go through adversity, but take a knee. Take care of your mental health. Take care of your physical health. And if you need to, fucking cry. We'll see you all next time. Take care.